I think one of the hard things about delegating and letting go for some people is when you realize it's because you don't have anything else. All right, it is Thursday, August 4th. I can't believe it's August. This is the Token CEO podcast. I'm Erika. This is episode 226. Before we begin, we're working on a ton of merch. I'm actually excited about the back to school merch. We've got laptop cases. We've got a bunch of Work Like a Girl stuff. We have Do Not Disturb. We have a whole line of notebooks. We have new t-shirts, so I'm all excited about that. So that's my ramble on merch. All right, let's talk about what's going on at Barstool. So Barstool, big news here this week is that Massachusetts legalized sports betting, which is amazing. That's obviously awesome for us. That is our home state. Dave created Barstool Sports in Boston. I got about 70 tweets yesterday on the Milton office and about buying the Milton office. I had the realtor, Red Dome Realty, which oddly I follow. So Red Dome Realty, who I reached out to Red Dome Realty I guess maybe when PASPA was repealed, so that would have been 2018 maybe, about buying the Milton office back. And we were thinking about expanding the office, and then Dave and I were talking about it, and I reached out to them, and I think it was like $2 million or something. You had to buy all the offices. And then obviously we smartened up about PASPA. We built a bigger office in New York. So then the Red Dome Realty guy is like, I offered to Erika and Dave 2 years ago. I never heard back. And I'm like, it's just cluttering my feed yesterday. So we're excited about sports betting. We're excited about sports betting and being in Massachusetts. Obviously, I think you'll see a big group of people going to Massachusetts. I wouldn't be surprised if Dave moves back to Massachusetts. I talked to Dave about that this morning. But anyways, it's cool for sports betting. It's great for Penn. We have a license in Massachusetts, so we won't get fucked like we have gotten in every other state. We'll have to obviously perform and make it valuable and make it worthwhile for folks. So it sounds like you may not be able to bet on Boston college sports, but I think that's okay. And it'll be awesome for us to have another base. Obviously want to open a sports bar there, so we got to figure out how we're going to do that. And those are the big things. We have Patty the Batty and Meatball Molly are in Chicago this weekend, so they're going to our sports bar in Chicago. Gaz was on his way there maybe today. Dave's headed there this weekend. Should be pretty awesome. I think we're doing something with a bunch of Penn VIPs. We launched Pardon My Cheesesteak. So we launched a virtual dining kitchen with PMT this week, which is the ultimate cheesesteak. Pretty cool. Hank was a big driver behind this. I went to a business meeting with Hank yesterday. It was the cutest thing. First of all, he had like a button-up shirt, a Robeck button-up shirt on, which is the same shirt I dressed like my 10-year-old in. So I was like, oh God, Hank is so cute. He got me a coffee before the meeting. He's like chivalrous. I was like, oh, love being in a meeting with Hank. I love all, what do they call Hank?
Corporate Hank.
Oh, I love Corporate Hank. That happened yesterday. I don't know why I'm talking about that. Oh, Hank was the big driver of Pardon My Cheesesteak. So we announced that on Pardon My Take this week. You can get the smaller version of the sub for like $10. You can get the supersized version, and it comes out to, when you add in the delivery cost, like $25, which I think is kind of bananas and way too expensive for a sub. Seems like Twitter agrees with me on that. But a lot of that is the delivery cost, which stinks. So it's kind of the hard thing in food delivery, which is like a low-cost food item. What you're really paying for is the convenience of not having to get off your ass and go get it. So same applies to our sub. A lot of chatter this week on Deshaun Watson. How do I feel about the Deshaun Watson thing? One is that let's just take a step back and look proportionately at how the NFL punishes players. Because I think how they punish players, what they punish them for, and the sentences or the punishments themselves are truly indicative of what the NFL cares about. So Calvin Ridley bets $1,500, 1500, only 2 zeros in that, bets $1,500 that his team's going to win. I get it. You can't bet on your team. He gets suspended for a year. Then you have Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon has a weed habit. Josh Gordon gets suspended for 25 games. So the NFL cares about betting, obviously. Can't bet on your team. They care a lot about weed. Can't be smoking weed, 25 games. That's a lot of games. Really care about weed, can't smoke weed. Then you get to the women, right? Ray Rice beats the living shit out of his wife in an elevator in like caught on camera, horrific, 2 games. So weed, 25 games, betting a year. you hit your spouse and get caught on camera, domestic violence, 2 games. So then you get to this week and you have Deshaun Watson. Okay, so Deshaun Watson is exposing himself to, I want to say 26 plus women. So he gets on the massage table. He premeditatively brings a way too small towel. So instead of using the sheet that everybody else uses when you get a massage, he's like, nope, I'm going to use the terrible towel. Puts the terrible towel on, lo and behold, gets an erection, starts putting his penis all over people. 30 women. So 30 women were exposed to him or were sexually assaulted by him. So what's his punishment? 6 game suspension, like not even an entire season. So weed, huge problem. Betting, huge problem. Women, not so much. Just a few games, like not really going to affect the whole season. In contrast, at MLB, so you look at MLB just for comparison. So Trevor Bauer was convicted of non-criminal sexual assault. He was suspended for 2 years and lost $60 million. Like Deshaun Watson's still going to make so much money. Like, yeah, this season's going to be like a little bit of a downer. His tax returns are going to be down this year, but he still has a chance to fight for a playoff. He's still going to play in 4+ games. And it's really just honestly a slap on the wrist. So I'm kind of bummed about that. I was texting someone, I was texting a lawyer I'm friends with yesterday, and I just was like, God, like, I don't actually think people care about women. Like, I know that's a crazy thing to say, but even just going through, the last 2 months, like people care about the stock price, people care about the perception, people care about playoff titles. Obviously, everybody and anybody cares about money. But when you really think about it, what I actually think is happening, I think there's 2 things happening. One is that I think the backlash on Me Too is real. Like, I think that the woke movement, the Me Too movement, like everybody went way too far. It's interesting that in times of economic prosperity, those types of movements are allowed to flourish, and they kind of go to the wayside when the economy tightens or the economy falters. So one thing I'm seeing, or just feeling anyways, is that like there's decidedly a backlash against wokeism, and there honestly I feel like is a little bit of a backlash on Me Too. I think everybody knows they're supposed to do the right thing with Me Too. I think mostly people just do things so the problem goes away and you don't have to talk about it anymore, and even more importantly, you don't have to deal with it anymore. But I think that's generally a problem. And then the second thing that I'm really kind of getting to the conclusion on is it's just so prevalent. Like, I think sexual harassment and sexual assault is so prevalent that people get sick of hearing about it, which sucks. I also think it's really disappointing. I think the NFL had an opportunity in this case, which was pretty cut and dry as far as I can tell, to do something demonstrable about protecting women. Like, the NFL is, you talk about the shield, you talk about the brand of the league, you think about Super Bowl being the number 1 night every year that women are assaulted. It's on Super Bowl Sunday. Like, there's just so much that they could do to make a statement that they don't tolerate that with players. The same way they don't tolerate drugs, the same way they don't tolerate gambling. It's kind of like, I don't know on sexual assault. And I just think that's really disappointing. So that's my take there. In other news, Instagram. So Instagram, anybody who's on Instagram, all I see is reels on Instagram. Like all day long, it's another reel. I'm on Instagram. I should be on a board call. I'm on Instagram. I'm on a conference call. It's like, blah, blah, blah. I hate that when you get busted and the noise goes. It sucks. Anyways, and it startles you. You get like the jump. Anyways, Instagram, in a move to compete with TikTok, obviously was pumping reels. It was super annoying. People were very mad online about it. Instagram has decided to stop their own Me Too strategy and is now moving back to old school photos. So amen to not turning on. I followed this like one vintage fashion boutique. The conversion is insane. I've literally ordered like 4 things this week because I opened my Instagram and it's a reel and it's like this really pretty woman in a vintage blazer and I'm like, I have to have that. But thankfully that's not going to happen anymore because Instagram is just going to show me a flat photo of the blazer instead of a reel. But I think the other thing that's interesting is that the Instagram audience is mad about it. And what Facebook and Instagram were saying is that they actually noticed that people were mad, like genuinely mad about the Reels. And that's why they're going to be switching back. So that's what's happening in the internet. All right, so that's kind of the inside Barstool. That's what we've got. Spotify had earnings this week. Penn has earnings today. So for anybody listening to this, you can hop right over and listen to Jay talk about Penn's quarterly performance. Spotify is now bragging that they have 433 million subs. That's amazing. That's a huge global number. They lost $197 million in this last quarter. That's not what Penn's losing, so I'm excited about that. But interesting to see that Spotify is still looking to invest, obviously, in music, obviously in creators, and then just driving that global growth. I'm excited to hear what Jay has to say today. And obviously, we're bullish about Penn and all of the things we're building and doing together. And we're fired up with Massachusetts. That just gives us a home state to play in. So, and then the other big thing is we're trying to figure out what we're doing this fall, which is just a never ending conversation. So excited about that. So we had Amanda Orson on this week. And what was more interesting actually than her history, which I wanted to dig way into, was the discussion around, what really stayed with me was a discussion around management styles. And obviously we'll air the interview after this, but one of the more interesting parts of the conversation was what was similar and what was very different in our management styles. And also just the challenge of being a manager, learning how to delegate, learning how to let go. I had a really interesting conversation with someone here. I was actually so psyched about it. Obviously I've been going through all that stuff on the WWE board, and I had somebody who works for Barstool ping me and be like, hey, do you have time for like a quick one-on-one? And I was like, yeah, totally. And whenever anybody asks me for a one-on-one, I'm like, oh, obviously you're quitting. But she was like, no, I just need, I need some career advice. I've hired this great team, and I'm struggling with how to delegate or how to think about empowering them and also fulfilling myself. And it was awesome. And we ended up talking for a really long time. And the thing that kind of came to me in that was like, God, this is like the absolute favorite part of my job. Like, of everything that I spend time on, helping a woman at work figure out her work is just like so deliciously rewarding. And it just makes me feel so good. And I get so much out of it, and I learn so much in that process. But, one of the things that I think everybody struggles with at work and in life is like, what's too little, what's too much, what's the right amount? And also, how do you navigate who you are, what you bring to the table, what you're good at, what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel valued, what gives you fulfillment? How do you balance doing that for yourself, and when you're a manager, doing that for other people? And some people are better at this. Some people are worse at this than others. I think it's one of those skills that it's not like riding a bike. It's not like you know how to do it and then you do it. I think it's one of those things that you have to try to get better at your entire career. So we were having this particular conversation about her career and just how much time she spends working and how she loves doing everything herself, and she's struggling to let go. And what we kind of got to was that she needed to be given new projects and new things to do and more to take on, so that she in turn could give new projects and more responsibility to her team. But then the other thing that I really took away from it, which I would say to any person listening to this, not just women, is that, she reminded me of myself, which was I really spent my 20s and 30s and I would say up until last year, just doing nothing but work. Like, it was always about the work. I worked all the time. I was always available. I was never off. There was never a job too small. There was never a phone call I didn't take. And really what I realized was that like work was my life. And I think one of the hard things about delegating and letting go for some people is when you realize it's because you don't have anything else. That's a dangerous thing to not acknowledge. And I think so many people have that. Like, I'm mad at myself about that. But I think if you love to work and you love your work, it's so easy to get lost in it versus putting yourself in life situations that you might not be as good at, that make you uncomfortable, that maybe make you feel lonely, that don't give you a level of fulfillment. And sometimes it's easier, instead of like tackling all the life things, just to do more of the work things. The work things feel safer. They're more controllable. There's some distance. You can achieve quick wins. The life things are like complicated and uncertain, and they have a lot of baggage, and there's a lot of emotion tied to them. So anyways, that was just something I was thinking about. We took a look at different management styles. So we'll start there, then we'll go to some Q&A, and then we've got a bunch of feedback from folks on Twitter and Instagram and on our Facebook group. All right, so before we do that, let's talk about Zingeroo. Can we talk about Zingeroo? Let's talk about Zingeroo. All right, so Zingeroo is an all-in-one trading app that makes investing competitive, social, and educational. So what's awesome about it, it's obviously very easy to use, and better yet, you can make other people feel stupid by virtue of what a good investor you are and how high you are on the leaderboard. So what's cool about Zingeroo, you can quickly look up a company and review their performance. You can join what's called a Zingeroo zone to interact with traders and to measure your performance on a live leaderboard. So essentially stunt all over the other white guys in there. You can purchase stocks or options to optimize your portfolio for your investment objectives. So it's not just about having fun and stunting on other people. It's also a great way to build your portfolio. Whether you're starting out or whether you are sophisticated in managing a portfolio, Zingeroo is a great way to learn more about trading options in a fun and interactive way. All right, so what do? You download Zingeroo today. They'll give you $25 to invest. If you join zones, you can compete for thousands of dollars in EFTs. Securities offered by Z Squared Securities LLC, member FINRA-SPIC. All right, let's talk about management styles. All right, what is a management style? Let's just start there. Management style is the way you manage people. No shit. Okay, that's good. What does management style encompass? A management style encompasses like what your vision is, how you prepare for being a manager, how you present yourself to your team, how you activate your team or the group of people around you to achieve a specific objective. It encompasses how you communicate, how you reward behavior, how you deal with poor performance, how you liaise and connect your people to other people. So technically it says your management style includes the way that a manager plans, organizes, makes decisions, delegates, and manages their staff. There are internal and external factors in management. Internal factors include the overall organization, the brand, the industry you work for, the type of culture that company has. 2 is the policies that company has. Are you in a highly regulated business? Are you in a business that isn't regulated at all? Are you working for a massive mega company, or are you working for a little startup? Are you working in Europe? Are you working in South America? Are you working in a rural setting with a small company? Are you working in an urban setting with a big company? The other things that affect management style is what the company prioritizes, the nature of the work that company does, and the way that employees are engaged broadly in an organization. So those are all the internal factors. The external factors include employment laws, obviously the economy, the competitiveness of the company in question. So how competitive is the industry? How competitive is the space? Consumers have a huge impact, right? Companies tend to think about consumers, whether those are business consumers or actual consumers. And those are external factors that affect the way someone manages. There are generally 3 styles of management. One is autocratic, so top down. So this is total control by the manager. One-way communication. The manager talks to you. You do not talk back to the manager. The manager makes all decisions and holds all power. So that's autocratic. Democratic is managers encourage employees to give input during the decision-making process, but they're ultimately responsible for the final decision. So the manager still makes the decision, but solicits input during the process. Communication goes both ways. Communication goes from the manager to the employee and from the employee to the manager. The third type is called laissez-faire, which is a hands-off approach to leadership. So employees are trusted to do their work without supervision. The boss or the manager tends to be hands-off. They don't micromanage. They're not in your shit. They're not particularly familiar even with the spots and dots of your particular job. Management is present at the delegation and delivery stages of work, but otherwise steps back and gives the staff freedom to control their workflow and outcome. All right, so those are the three different types of management. Autocratic, let's talk about that. So the first subcategory of autocratic is the authoritative management style. They dictate everybody's role. There's no room for feedback or conversation. The good side of an autocratic manager, the one thing I'll say in this is I don't think that anyone has only one style. I think that you can be autocratic with some people, democratic with other people, and laissez-faire with a totally different group of people. So one thing that I think that is important if you're looking for a job or you're at a job or you're about to go into your mid-year review, you should be thinking about, what kind of style does your manager have with you and what type of style does your manager have in general? And then also it's a good thing to think about, like, what do you want your style to be like? I'm reading this and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of a dictator in some places. I'm laissez-faire in others, and I solicit a lot of feedback in a third. So the good thing about an autocratic manager is that everyone's roles are clear and everyone has direction. So if you are engaged in highly specialized work, it's like the factory system. You know exactly what you're supposed to do. You know you have to produce so many widgets. You know you have to produce them in a certain way, in a certain time frame, in a certain style. So there's not a lot of ambiguity in an autocratic environment. The bad thing is that people who are highly creative, or people who have a lot to say, or people who want to have a dialogue probably aren't going to like an autocratic manager. It's rare in an autocratic environment for new ideas to emerge. It's rare for new people to emerge. Like autocratic structures, if you look at like Putin, if we're looking at like management of the world, Putin is an autocratic manager, right? I think you call that a dictator in government, but not a lot of feedback going on with Putin. But anyways, the bad thing about this is it can also lead to a lot of turnover. I would also say is if you have a very young workforce, if you have young people working for you, in my opinion, people in their 20s are like highly, highly allergic right now to autocratic styles. Probably need some autocratic styles to learn the skills and to get the chops, but don't like them. Second is the persuasive management style. I actually like this one more. The boss is still going to tell you exactly what to do and how exactly to do it, but they're more persuasive in their dictatorship. So they explain more. They put more wrapping around what the manager wants you to do. They invite questions. They're more likely to explain the decision-making process and the rationale behind policies. It's still a one-way conversation. It's just a one-way conversation with additional reasoning. And then the third is paternalistic management style. Upper management refers to staff as family and does what they view best for the staff. They say decisions come from a place of expertise and legitimacy. Decisions are explained to employees. There's no room for collaboration or feedback. I don't love this style. I hate when people sometimes, I hate when people refer to work as a family. Like, work is not your fucking family. Like, it's just not. So I don't like that. So let's move to democratic. All right, first style you've got is consultative management style. Managers ask for thoughts. The manager asks for feedback. They're open to conversations, but the manager still makes the ultimate decision. The good thing about this, creates a lot of conversation. People want to be heard. The bad thing about it is it can take a lot of time. Like, it's exhausting and it's time consuming to have a bunch of conversations, to solicit a bunch of input, to listen to what everybody says, even though you think half of them are totally stupid and don't know what they're talking about. Like, it can be a rigmarole of a process. The second is a participative management style, similar to consultative, but employees are given access to more info on the company and its goals. Good open conversation, again, time consuming. Collaborative management style, highly collaborative. You work closely with people. Again, awesome and inclusive, can be inefficient. Transformational management style. Managers work on pushing their staff to the next level and reaching their potential. They teach growth by pushing employees outside of their comfort zone. I like to think on my best days I have a transformational management style. People will probably say I'm just autocratic, but managers work alongside their employees. That's important to me. Good, it increases innovation and employees can adapt to change. Bad, if it's not used carefully, it can cause staff burnout and people can't keep up with the pace. I also think there's another negative of this, which is you can just inadvertently make people feel badly about themselves. Last one under democratic is coaching management style. So instead of seeing the team as a family, the management sees the team as a team and they use more coaching type of approaches. That can create strong bonds. It makes people feel good about themselves. But it also can generate stars, like you have your stars who you cater to, and then you have the rest of the team, which you kind of don't. Laissez-faire, we talked about. The two types are delegative. That's like, I don't do any work. I just give the work to everybody else. I don't love that one so much. I think laissez-faire managers don't become better managers and they cut themselves short because they don't actually learn the skills that they need to grow. Like when I look at people who've had the same job for like 18 years, like when we were interviewing for our head of sales job and the CRO job, I interviewed so many people, but they had been at their companies legitimately for 12 plus years. And I'm like, at year 11, what are you doing differently? Like, what are you like challenging yourself on and pushing yourself towards? I think a lot of those people are kind of like laissez-faire. Like they can leave at 4:30. COVID gave them 2 years off. You can mail it in. You know how to do it. You know exactly where the lunchroom is. You know, it's like it's habit. And I think, you know, the visionary style of laissez-faire management can be pretty cool. I think Dave has this, which is Dave's just such a visionary, but he has no patience for explaining the details. What's good about that is people believe in vision. People like vision. People are seeking vision. What's bad is it can create chaos and inertia, and people are like, well, now what do I do? So that's the different styles of management. We got a ton of feedback from folks in terms of what today's people think about managers. So things that people like tough love. They like guidance. They like no bullshit. Somebody told us that they like that their manager tells him or her not to cry, but lets her have her space. Says thank you. Says thank you is a big one. You know what? It's so funny. Sometimes I think like the biggest secret to management is just say thank you and be encouraging every once in a while and shower people with food. Like, it's so simple. Like, we just had our production meeting today. What I was thinking about in that meeting is I just was like, God, free food goes a long way with this group. Like, legitimately, I was like, if I just fed them once a week, they'd be much happier. The other thing is people like tools for their toolbox. So people like to have skills that they can take with them and apply either to their work or to their life. We also got a ton of bad stories. I love the bad stories. People love bad stories. I put out a tweet this morning about management styles and my inbox is like, and it just reads like an ongoing whining complaint, which makes sense. Like everybody has shitty bosses. I've been a shitty boss. I've certainly had shitty bosses. My favorite one was somebody wrote us and said, boy, do I, well, the grammar's tough, but boy, did I used to have a bad boss. I was working in child protective services. So first of all, that's a story in its own right. It was a hard job, but I enjoyed it. Like, God bless the people working in social services. Need more people doing that. I was going through a rough case. I'll spare you the details. Thank you. And I was getting pretty burnt out. My boss at the time said I should probably start drinking like he did. Anyways, a few months later, he went on leave and never came back. That's when you kind of just like shrug at your manager and you're like, well, that was that. So that's just a little bit of a deep dive into management. Hopefully people liked that. All right, so let's toss it to Q&A. So first, management Q&A. What do you do if you have a manager, but they don't actually do anything to help, guide, or support me? I was always getting bi-weekly meetings with her canceled, and when we do them, she always just says, yep, everything's fine. Okay, I struggle with this one. I'll tell you how I feel about it personally. So one is I don't really like to be managed. I believe in feedback. I like to get feedback, but I also simultaneously hate it. And then I really hate being told what to do. So in some ways, having a manager that doesn't meet with you that much and doesn't like deeply engage with what you're doing, it's not always the worst thing. It probably means you're doing a pretty good job. It probably means that you're delivering on all your objectives. And it probably means that he or she has like bigger fish to fry and they've got worse problems to handle. That's the positive. I think that type of situation, if you are very self-motivated and very driven and you can self-perpetuate yourself and self-grow your control and your impact and your sphere of influence and your accomplishments, that's good. The thing that sucks is that most people aren't great at that and they need some type of encouragement. They need feedback. They want to understand how they're doing. They need help and guidance in building new tools or putting new tools in their toolkit. So in this case, your manager just sounds kind of disengaged. So I don't think that's a great sign. If I were in your shoes, one thing I would do is find other like mentor type people or other people at your manager's level who you can have a relationship with and who you can learn from. All I really ever care about at work is learning and doing things and testing and learning and seeing what I can figure out or what we can experiment on or what things I can get better at or develop. So I think what's important for you is like you really don't want to be in a job where the experience itself isn't teaching you or the manager, him or herself, isn't teaching you. So you want to get that exposure. I think the second thing you could do is if your one-on-ones always get canceled, just send an email update. Just say, hey, I know you don't have a whole lot of time. I just want to be proactive and tell you what I'm working on. I feel guilty about this. Like I see Chase. Chase runs production now. Chase is doing an awesome job. Like he's crushing it. He's open. He's approachable. He's fixed so many things here. I don't ever make any time for Chase. And it's not because I don't care about what Chase is doing. It's because Chase is doing such a good job and everything else here is on fire that I just don't spend the time with Chase, and that's bad. So I also think that, making sure you do pop in and as a manager, making sure you do reach out to the people and especially the people who are doing a really good job. But in this case, if you want to be sure you're on the right track, find other people who can mentor and support you. Do be proactive in reaching out to your boss. And then ultimately, if nothing changes and you're not getting new titles or promoted or more responsibility and you're just kind of floating along because everybody else is floating along, maybe you want to choose a new job. All right, second question. My manager never, ever, ever makes me or my team feel appreciated. They have a very large sense of I'm better and more important than you, which results in them just barking to things to do at us and never saying thank you and making us feel like our work is never good enough. Should I say something? Absolutely, you should say something. So one is, I think, it's like skills for adolescents. Did you guys have to take skills for adolescents? I don't know. My middle school was fucked up. I had to take skills for adolescents. Or maybe there was something wrong with me and I was fucked up. But so skills for adolescents, you were supposed to go through this exercise where you said, I feel because. So you always constructed your statement to someone. It was like kind of conflict resolution, like nice conflict resolution. You were supposed to say, when you bark at me and humiliate me in front of my peers, I feel down and demotivated because I've worked hard on this project and I feel like you don't understand. I feel like you don't appreciate my contribution or you don't recognize the amount of work in it. So I definitely think you should say something. My gut is that you're not alone in feeling this way. My other gut is that your manager isn't going to take well to the feedback. I think your manager sounds very, very callous, and your manager also sounds insecure. So I do think it's worth saying something, and I think you should just be pretty straight up about it. You can use skills for adolescents or not. And you can just say, hey, look, don't make it a we thing because that'll make your manager feel defensive. Just make it a me thing, which is, hey, I've been working super hard on this project. I'm really proud about blank, blank, blank. I did these things. I see the contribution to the company. I'm excited about what this could mean for us. And I just want to get a sense of, am I delivering what you're expecting? And I would try to have that conversation in a one-on-one environment and see if your manager is more open or more appreciative in that environment. And then when the manager is like, no, that sucks. I told you to get back to the salt mine, do this or that or whatever. I think you can say, hey, you know what? Like, I really want to stay at this company a long time. I really want to grow my career. I want to do better and better work. And I'm feeling demotivated because I feel like my work is never good enough. The effort is never enough. I feel like my hours and time and the investment of my energy and myself isn't appreciated. And I would just open the conversation that way and see what your manager says. And then if the manager doesn't change, and this is just kind of like it is the way it is in your group, then I would leave, or I would find a different group to work in your company, because subjecting yourself to that kind of situation for a long period of time is going to be really depressing for you, and you don't want to spend your career like that. Third question: when do you know you're ready to be a manager? I've taken more responsibility at work, and by doing that, I've naturally had a few younger people fall under my radar. Should I be getting paid more now that I'm technically managing them? Should I ask my manager what we're doing about this? Okay, you have a lot of questions. One is, I don't know that anybody's ever ready for anything. Like, I'm not ready for my life. I don't know. Like, I just don't think anybody's ready for anything. But sometimes you are a manager. So clearly you have fallen into the bucket of being a manager. So first of all, congratulations. Second of all, before you go asking for more money, before you say, what are we doing about this, to your manager, why don't you work on being a good manager? So what does it mean to be a good manager? Have a vision. Share that vision with your team. Create a sense of team. Create an environment where the younger people who are falling under you, they understand what the expectation is. They understand what your vision is for your job and their jobs. They feel supported in their efforts. Say thank you. Buy them food. We just covered this. And really make sure that you are creating a high-performing group. Now, once you get that underway, then you go to your manager and you're like, hey, I'm managing these people. My scope of responsibility has changed. The depth of my job has changed. And I want to be sure I'm being compensated for the increased performance I'm driving for the company and the increased scope of responsibility I have in my job. So that's what I would do. So that's Q&A. Next up, we're going to talk to Amanda Orson. So what is Curve? Amanda Orson, Curve is a company. So Curve is a company that was started in the UK. Amanda is running their US division. She is the CEO. What is Curve? So Curve collects all of your credit and debit cards. So instead of having a wallet with like 15 different credit cards in it, you've forgotten about half of them, you overuse some of them. Curve is like your one-stop shop for credit and debit. It's one card. They have a mobile app. You can make payments and withdrawals, and it just kind of takes all of your credit card activity and puts it in one place. So Amanda joins us. We talk about her going to the Citadel. We talk about her job at Curve. We talk about how she got her job. We talk about what she likes to do outside of work. I thought she was awesome. I really enjoyed our conversation. Totally different cat than me, but I learned a ton from her. So that's Amanda Orson. Amanda, welcome to Token.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Tell us who you are, what you do, and why people should know about it.
I am Amanda Orson. I am the CEO of Curve, which is a financial technology company, and I'm responsible for launching Curve in the United States.
Okay. And where did Curve originate?
In the United Kingdom. Our headquarters are in London.
Okay. And what does Curve do?
So Curve is a smart card and app that aggregates the cards in your wallet and simplifies and hopefully better rewards your financial life.
Okay, so I've got like a Discover card, an Amex card, I got 15 different credit cards. I get Curve, and it just puts that all together.
Right. So with Curve, you upload your underlying cards into our app.
Yep.
And then when you're actually using the Curve card, you can swipe and indicate that's the card you want to use. Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of like PayPal. I use PayPal basically for the same thing, and you just sit on top of all of the existing cards that people have. What do
Similar.
Do does Amex and Discover, do they like you or not like you?
Right now, the issuers that we've talked to are happy because they're actually leaving the house. A big part of the problem is that Americans have like 7 or so cards.
Okay.
Debit and credit, and then weird esoteric use cards like
Yeah.
store cards. And they just don't leave the house. So at least if they're in...
And by that you mean you're just not using the card?
Yeah, like it's sitting in a sock drawer somewhere.
Yeah. Okay,
or
got
coffee
it.
mug.
Okay.
But you're just not using it. So they actually leave the house. And with Curve, we are actually consuming, say, that small fee that Apple Pay or Google Pay charges, not the underlying issuer. And I mean, it's just a good way to be very consumer centric. Like the consumer gets to drive their own choice.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. And you can take it with you. Now, do you have a physical card as well?
We do.
Okay, got it. And how does that work?
So physical card, tap. You can actually use it like a normal card anywhere else that you would actually use. Actually, I have one with me.
Oh, let's see. And who's the bank underneath that?
It's a fintech bank called Hatch Bank.
And how did you get to Curve?
Oh, that is a very circuitous conversation. I was on the other side of the table when they're fundraising for their Series B.
Okay.
With the venture capital firm that led their round.
Okay.
I was doing due diligence and I was dismantling them.
This business sucks.
Yeah. Specifically on marketing technology.
Okay.
But Shahar, the founder CEO, and I really got along. He actually loved that pushback and asked me.
Which was probably rare because I feel like most VCs are like.
Yeah, I think there were, especially in 2018, 2019, they were just like writing checks.
Yeah. Okay.
We were not like that.
Okay.
So yeah, he asked me to come aboard and actually build out a product for him specifically in London, and I said no.
Okay.
Because I'm American and my parents are getting older and I want to be here.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go to London. But good founder CEO, he didn't hear no the first, second, or third time.
That's amazing. Okay, that's really cool. And then I was reading that you went to the Citadel. So like talk about your career. Like I'm interested in your collegiate experience and then how'd you get into marketing? How'd you get into technology? How'd you get into investing?
Okay, so
it's a lot there.
It's very varied and very circuitous.
Okay.
So I graduated from the Citadel. I was one among the first classes of women to graduate.
Okay.
So I graduated in 2003.
And how many people were in the class and how many were women?
I think we matriculated 32 or 33 and we graduated in that year 9.
Okay.
One of my classmates actually graduated the year prior, but it's very, very small.
Wow, that's a small class in general.
Well, that's just the women in the class. The men were probably 400. So all in, that school at the time was like 1,900 people.
Okay.
Mighty Citadel Bulldogs, so
okay.
But yeah, I ran cross country when I was there, so definitely enjoyed the D1 athlete thing. And afterward, I had intended to have a military career, but couldn't take it up because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Okay.
And ended up on this sort of circuitous path of figuring out what the heck to do. So I was working.
Was that devastating to you? Like, were you pissed about that?
Devastating. Like I spent like 5 years trying to get back in.
Interesting.
And couldn't, but neither here nor there. It ended up being, I'm in a great place, so I have no.
It
worked out.
Works out. Yeah.
So I ended up going home and figuring out how to basically monetize sites because I'd been building sites for a long time.
Okay.
That led to building out my own agency.
Okay.
That led to building out properties that we actually like built and then sold, like businesses.
Okay.
Building successively larger businesses and then eventually having an exit or two that allowed me to come in and become an investor.
Okay, that's interesting. And which of those jobs did you like the best, including the one you have now?
I love being an operator.
Okay,
I like being in the weeds. I really like 0 to 1. I like taking something that didn't exist and making it happen.
Yeah, same.
Yeah?
It's addictive. It's so funny. I was having this conversation today because we're in this interesting place at Barstool where we went from 0 to 1 and then 0 to 10. And there's a lot of people here who loved the 0 to 1 best.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I loved the 0 to 1 best. Like the problems you have when you're dealing with scale and integrations and acquisitions, it's just different problems in a certain way. And it's just a different worldview that you have to have. It's a different level of practice. It's a different level of discipline. It's a different level of organization. And it's hard for people because the people who loved 0 to 1 aren't really the people that loved the 100 to the 300.
So how are you dealing with it?
I'm struggling with it. I came from big companies predominantly. I worked at a lot of startups and then I worked at a lot of big internet companies. And I always loved the startups the best, obviously. But I think the thing when I look at it is what makes 0 to 1 so interesting is like you're passionate. There's a huge problem to figure out. There's a lot of uncertainty. The road ahead of you isn't written, right? It's not paved for you. So my feeling is like, all right, I just need to recreate that for myself and recreate that for our company. And then it still feels the same way it felt 0 to 1. That's what I'm trying to do.
So always day one for you.
Always day one.
How do you deal with things going from wearing many hats, like you wear 1,000 hats in 0 to 1, to like slowly giving those hats away? How do you learn to delegate? When do you learn to cede control?
Oh, I love ceding control. I think that my dad always used to say, like, the best control is no control. I'm not a highly controlling person. I'm a very driven person, and I want things done, but I don't necessarily need to do them myself. I really my issue is not delegation. My issue is that I don't like middle management. I want to be close to the doer. Like, I want the guy on social media. I'm like, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you seeing? What are you learning? The guy who manages, or the girl who manages all the girls and whatever, is less interesting to me, because I'm like, you're not doing. So my issue is more, in my career in general, is how can I be more supportive to the people who organize the people doing things? That's been harder for me. How do you do it?
Yeah, I was going to say that is harder, especially if you have a bias towards operation. Like, if you are the person that likes to be in the weeds,
totally,
and like tear down the analytics, tear down the spreadsheet, tear down, look at the stats.
Yeah, that's right.
And
like,
then,
I want to do it myself.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have like the person that's just the manager of those people. That's really hard.
And it's hard for them, because they're like, I'm corralling this thing. I'm getting it organized. And that's hard. I'm like, no, I want to know, like, who's making the creative. So how have you managed that?
I'm honestly struggling with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really difficult because I'm so accustomed to having many hats and always wearing many hats. And being cool with that, like, switch up of like going from bringing up the Instacart stuff to, talking about a giant strategic development deal in the same hour. A lot of other people aren't. So one of the things that I'm having to be very conscious and intentional about, talking to our new employees who have done, like, I do this thing, and like I might do like this and this, which is related to this thing, but I do this thing. I've had to be really intentional about just remembering that not everybody is the 0 to 1 person. Not everybody thinks like I do, and to be more empathetic with intention.
That's hard. Very. I like a lot of hats. I like people who like a lot of hats.
I do too, and I'm definitely biased towards them. So I, again, have to be thoughtful about that during reviews and stuff, because sometimes you're a person that's like super great at just doing this one niche thing is really valuable.
Yeah, and you're like, that's great to stay there, and then you're like, shut the fuck up, don't say anything more, don't judge them for it.
Exactly.
What are you not good at work?
Delegation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely
You're
too
a
much
control
of a control freak. Yeah. Well, Dib's here. She'll tell you.
Is she a control freak?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of us are.
Okay. So how many people are in Curve in the U.S.?
Right now, I think we have 20.
Okay, so it's so small. That's
really
fun.
small. Really small and really efficient. Like, we were very, very, very intentional about not hiring other people until it was almost painful.
Yep. Have you made any bad hires?
We did. We made well, I shouldn't name names. We made one bad hire, and unfortunately paid a lot of money to an external recruiter for that bad hire.
That's annoying.
And recognized it like day 92.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, come on.
Shit. Yeah.
One of the things that has been...
Do you blame the recruiter, or do you blame you guys?
I think I blame us. I mean, I think that the recruiter also was probably oversold by this particular candidate.
Yeah.
That's fine. His pedigree looked great.
Yeah, of course.
That's
People
the most
look good on paper.
Right,
Yeah.
I know. But I think for us, we should have recognized earlier on that, like, the level of effort just wasn't there. The level of communication wasn't there. There was no urgency.
Yeah.
Like, urgency is a really good, like, trigger to sort of understand that somebody
urgency
gets
is
it.
a good cultural, because it's funny. There's a lot of people with the skill, right? There's a lot of people with the pedigree. There's a lot of people with the background. And it's that thing that is going to make someone succeed in a high-paced environment, or a high-growth environment, or a very dynamic environment.
Yes.
And I think that those environments are almost harder to hire for than a stable environment. Like, where, we will be acquired by Penn National in a year. And one of the things we talk about is, like, Penn was growing 1% year over year. Like, that takes a certain skill set, that takes a certain demeanor, that takes a certain discipline, that takes a certain adherence to rules or process. and we've been drinking from a fire hose. So those skills don't work over here, and our skills don't necessarily work over there. And how do you create this, Godzilla or this monster in the middle that's a hybrid of both?
That's really interesting. So I didn't realize that you guys have that long in your M&A process. How are you thinking about what that looks like going forward?
Because we've been thinking about it. Yeah, we've been thinking about it a lot. I mean, part of the reason the Penn acquisition happened right after the pandemic hit. So I want to say February, March 2020. And one of the reasons that Penn wanted not a try before you buy, but a long runway, is they'd never had a media company. They weren't familiar with media companies. They come from a highly regulated space, a very deliberate business, a physical business. So having that runway has actually been very healthy. If you break it into quarters, like the first quarter of it was, what is this? How does this work? Who are these? And the second is like, okay, what could the thinking of like, what could that become? How would this work together? And now we're in the latter two quarters of, all right, how will this work together? And what all can we expect from it? So we're kind of going through that. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack because you've got people that are used to wearing a lot of hats versus people that have been like doing one thing for a long
undisciplined,
time.
wearing a lot of hats, doing things with little regard for anything else. And then you've got like, hey, we've got regulators and investors and the stock market. What are you guys doing? So I like that challenge. I think it's definitely a challenge. One of the things that we've also, kind of gotten to is that only certain people should be at the wall.
Yeah.
I try to keep the really creative, undisciplined, and beautifully undisciplined people away from the wall. Only certain people should be on the wall. And so we need wall people. We need people at the middle, and then we'll keep our people on the fringe. And I think that's how you keep fringe people happy and how you keep middle people productive. And then it's just about how do you build the bridges on this side and on that side.
Yeah, how do you translate like super creative people to people that have been working in a highly regulated industry all the time? Yeah, that's really hard. That's a big challenge.
Hard. I mean, you see it. You must deal with that a lot.
Yeah, actually. So Dan Pizwalski, our head of product in the United States, was the first person that I hired here. And he is like tried and true, dyed-in-the-wool finance guy, like Amex, MasterCard, First Annapolis Consulting. But he is so good at understanding how to be creative, like how to color outside the lines, but still inside the box.
Yeah,
and that's a really valuable skill.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. That is the skill. That is the skill. But you must need a lot of people like that, I would think.
Yes. I mean, that's pretty much the archetype, especially if they have any finance experience of the people that do well here.
Completely. Wait, so I have to go back. So, all right, do you still run? Are you still a runner?
I am actually not a runner. I've done a lot of other sports though since I graduated.
Okay. Did you like running? I think cross-country runners are psychos.
I
really do. What goes through your head if you're running that long?
I loved cross-country because it's outside, and I grew up in the north. I grew up in New Jersey, but I grew up in the northwestern corner, so we had nice fall foliage, and it was always a fall. It was gorgeous.
It is a good sport, like good life sport. You know how to run.
Yes, knowing how to run
comes
in handy.
Yeah, in all sorts of situations.
Track I hated.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I hated indoor track in particular because it's like the very smallest. It's like inside a gymnasium.
Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah.
It smells like gym.
Oh, and I used to run the 3, the 5, and the 10K, like at a meet.
Oh my God, that's so boring.
The 10K would be, I can't remember, like 40-something laps, more than that, around the little indoor.
That's not fun.
Yeah, I just feel like a hamster.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's nothing redeeming about it.
No. I remember reading about the women in the Citadel class. That's so interesting. Did you love it or hate it? Like, were you in a fight every day? Like, how welcoming were people? I'm assuming not.
Most of it was no. I would say most of it wasn't. Some people were absolutely amazing plank holders because they wanted to open the door and sort of set the table for what was the inevitable thing that would happen.
Yeah, this is going to happen.
Exactly.
The women are coming.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
They're coming. Yeah.
And to give it some perspective, the service academies had matriculated in, I think, 76. So the first class of graduating women was 80.
1980 was the first class the Citadel had.
No. That was the first class of the service academy. So like West Point, Annapolis,
got it.
Air Force Academy.
And was the Citadel the holdout?
The Citadel and VMI were two state-supported military schools.
What's
Virginia Military Institute. So they're in Lexington, Virginia. We're in Charleston, South Carolina. And those schools only matriculated in 1998 and 1999, respectively.
Had their first classes. What's matriculate mean?
Basically, like, they entered in women. The problem with these military schools is that they don't graduate as many as they matriculate. Like, a lot of people come in.
They drop out. But a lot of people drop out of the Citadel anyways, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, were you running and climbing walls and like army, like, what's that crawl on the ground?
Low crawling. Low crawling, yeah.
Were you doing that every day?
No, generally not low crawling every day. Definitely did more than my share of push-ups. And
are you good at them now?
Yeah, I think I'm reasonably good for a 40-year-old woman, but
that's amazing.
I wouldn't pit myself against like an 80
too high, and then I hate that. You must have great form. You seem so disciplined to me.
That is not probably true.
Really?
No, it's a farce.
Do you like get wild?
She's disciplined.
She's so disciplined.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm that disciplined because I know.
Organized?
I am very organized and very neat.
You should see her notebooks.
Okay, how did Curve get its name?
I actually don't know. It used to be named something completely different, and I think we have lots of fun stories about it, but I think it was just a brand decision. I think that's literally it.
They're like, the URL's available.
No, it wasn't. I was a part of that discussion. We had to go and obtain the URL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you pay a lot for it?
Yes, it's a 5-letter. This is my world. This is where I come from. Yeah, it's a 5-letter dictionary word.com domain. And yes, of course, that's very expensive.
I think it sounds like a feminine brand.
I think it does too, but most of our consumers are early adopters and tech guys, tech bros.
Yeah. Do you like them or not like them?
I totally get that world. I totally get that world.
You seem like a tech bro without being like a misogynistic asshole. I kind of think of myself the same way. Except that I like the Kardashians.
I think I can live in both worlds very easily because probably like you, I've been in male-dominated industries my whole life.
Totally. And probably always will be.
And I probably always will be too.
That's sad. It's a sad thing to say. Okay, what's next for Curve?
So launch, right now we're in waitlist. We should be coming down off of the waitlist in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
And then general availability, and then the product just keeps getting better as we go.
Awesome. And how would people find it and follow you?
The aforementioned curve.com.
Great.
I'm on Twitter at Amanda Orson.
Okay.
It's pretty simple.
Okay.
And
what's the number one secret to having a horse farm?
I don't know. I'm only 8 weeks into it. So I'd say right now.
You're going to be good at it?
I hope so. Right now I'd say invest in quality lawn mowing equipment.
Okay, great quality. Do you have a brand that you like? Are you like a Kubota person or
maybe I'll get that way.
Person?
Follow up with me in 6 months.
Okay, great. And then did you name the farm?
Yes, it's Good Fortune Farm.
Okay, that's a good name.
Yep.
I love it. All right, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
That was fun. All right, that's it for today. Buy our merch. Go to store.barstoolsports.com. Stay tuned for new stuff coming up. If you are in the state of Massachusetts, let's download that Barstool Sportsbook the minute you can. Buy a cheesesteak or buy a cheesesteak for your team. And don't wear a small towel at the massage parlor and put your penis on women who don't want it. So that's what I got for you today. We'll see you back here next week.